We live in a passive aggressive time. That's right, I said it. I said it. It's been like this for a few years. The we become more passive aggressive than ever, and everyone's been absorbing it, and we just become a more douchier people as a society. You know what I'm saying? No compassion for others, no compassion for anything outside of the individual. Fuck everybody else, and let me just get whatever I want to get. You know, and if it blatantly sounds like it's bad for everybody else, oh well. That's the times we're living in. We're living in the times of people being real dickheads out here. Real dickheads. Yeah. That's the times we're living in. We're living in times where you can be a total uh prune, you can be a total uh just tone deaf type, person. Person who would sign up, for affluenza or something like that. This is a tone deaf person that doesn't understand what other people go through. That's the times we live in. And that's what we have going on. People wonder, why we having these kinds of issues in society, and it's like, duh, we living in a passive aggressive time. We living in a time that people are selfish as hell. You know, People were already selfish like in the '90s and the 2000s, but this now, like, everybody is in their own world. Everybody's in their echo chamber, and so people are just self-inflicted with whatever it is they choose to follow. You know, let's say they watch a channel and it's, got some crazy news about high speed chases and banks getting robbed and oh my gosh, all the terrible things that go on in the country, or the terrible things that just go on in the country, area, city, whatever. Um, these people. What was I gonna say? You got all these people in towns and whatever. You get them back in the day. When you get them back in the day, you know that you can get some decency. I forgot what I was gonna say. Shit. I think that's part of what I wanted to say. Whatever. You're gonna get some decency. Now everybody has an ego, everybody's up their own ass, man, everybody thinks they're, all this and all that, and you can't tell them nothing about nothing. And even as a kid I could see this coming in with American Idol. Like, some of these people are so up their own asses and in love with themselves, that, someone telling them something other than whatever they have going on is someone telling them whatever they're doing is not fly, whatever. They're like so oblivious to hearing that. Like, they have no self awareness because they're blinded by their love of themselves. They're so self absorbed that they can't pay attention to any of that. And that's the society we're living in. Like, it's just real vapid. Uh, People doing things to get points in their own head to feel a bit better about themselves and not really change anything. That's just my thought. On the on the on the passive aggressiveness in the society, and where that comes from. Just pointing it out. Because people don't really want to talk about this. Because people don't notice this type of stuff. Our society has just become more, self-absorbed, and not just self-absorbed, but like, just real, like I said, vapid and like lacking any substance, which is why we can't get good movies. We can't get good TV shows. You can't get good things in this time period because no one wants to think, or no one can think for themselves. They let social media think for them. They think they're smarter because they know how to use a phone in different ways than people in the past. People think because we have all this technology now that makes them smarter. Like, no, it doesn't. You're a smarter dummy. Yeah, you got a lot of smart ways to still be dumb. That's what we got. We got a lot of people like that. Find a lot of smart ways to be dumb. And, you know, and that's why we don't solve the issues we got to solve. If you told people back in the 80s or in the 90s that there was an issue with genocide, I think they go after them a lot harder. People would be united. They wouldn't sit there fighting over silly stuff. They just be like, hey, it's a genocide. Listen, like, America, there used to be a lot of protest in the country. But they used to have like real impact because, everyday people were pissed off. Let's say they were tired of, malnutrition or whatever, and they rallied up and they marched all over. It makes some noise, and then people would go, or the government, they go and address the issue. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how it was. And it's just like we lost all that. Like, nobody's trying to be, humane. No one wants to be, um, no one wants to have heart. We're living in the times where it's whatever you say. You can just make up who you are. It could be totally fake and nobody cares. And no one knows what being real is anyway. They constantly cry about being real and how real they are. They're saying the same stuff other people say. They're saying the same stuff that other people say. Um, and they think they're saying something different. And then when somebody different, somebody that actually thinks different comes along, now they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do with themselves, and they turn into NPCs. You know what I'm saying? And they see somebody that thinks different, has a different talking point or a different way of talking about things that you know scares their worldview of things and makes them uncomfortable. So yeah, like, and I just want to keep going in on this, passive aggressiveness that we live in, and the entitlement that has grown in our society. People think they're supposed to get certain things, just because of who they are, and they don't think that there's you know that they're not as important as they've been told. Like, you're not just always gonna get everything you want because of who you are. You know, can't go. You got to get over yourself. And society has coddled people, made people think that they can do whatever they want, and some people really get delusional. And so they live in this world where they're their own celebrities, and they talk to people crazy, and disrespect people, without even thinking about, what they're doing. They do all these types of things, and this is a weakening society. You have that going on. So those are just my thoughts. That's it.
It's okay. We're all here to support